Warriors Home Improvement Show, built by Parr Lumber. When it comes to big or small projects around the home, Tony and Corey have got the know-how and the answers to make your life just a bit easier. Here they are, your Weekend Warriors, Tony and Corey.
Hey, welcome to the Weekend Warriors Home Improvement Show podcast. I'm Corey Valdez.
And I'm Tony Cookston.
Thanks for tuning in with us today. You know, I can't get over saying tuning in. You know, we were on the radio for 10 years.
Yeah.
Now we're focusing just on the podcast. So if you're finding us, thank you so much. Anyway, we're in the studio today, and we're talking about energy efficiency.
Tuning in is funny.
I know.
Because when you say tuning in, you imagine the little dial,
yeah.
right, and the orange line, and you're trying to find that spot between static and
it's kind of like when you say roll up the window.
Right.
You know, you roll up the window.
Right. What we did when we were kids,
absolutely.
That's because we are old and we remember cars that had windows that rolled up and radios that had to be tuned.
Like energy efficiency to us was put on a sweater when it's cold outside.
That's right. That was energy efficiency was close the door behind you.
Right.
In my
Turn
house.
off the lights.
Yeah.
Actually,
my dad would say, "We're not trying to heat the entire neighborhood, son. Close the door."
Born in a barn?
Born in a barn. Yeah, it's funny about energy efficiency and the different levels of it that is available to us. But I think what we're going to talk about today is being able to use less energy, to do the things you're doing now, to spend less money, and not even notice it.
Right.
Right.
And the probably the biggest thing is comfortability. You want to make your home as comfortable as possible without spending out the nose to keep it warm during the winter or keep it cool during the summer. You want it to be comfortable. And sometimes that is putting on a sweater, but there's lots of things you can do to the home you own. And there's lots of things you can do if you're thinking about building a new home. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's great. This is a good topic. Lots of really good nuggets in here. Things you can implement right away, and things that might take some planning, and some things that might cost money up front, but will save you
in the long run.
Yeah, in the long run.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about all of the different things that you could do to your current home. If you have a home that was built in the last 100 years,
right,
versus something that's probably less than 20 years old, it's probably pretty inefficient. My home personally was built in the 70s, and there were so many problems with my house. I didn't have any insulation in my crawl space. I had like 2 inches of insulation in my attic.
You know, it's so funny when you talk about your house in particular, and we do that a lot because we have an intimate relationship with the construction of your house. And I'll tell you why that is. It was built the way it was built, and it was efficient for its time. But then it went through a remodel. And when your house went through a remodel, it was now subject to the level of understanding of the person who did the work and whether or not they were following through with all the things that they were supposed to do.
Right.
And the quality of the materials that they used.
Right.
Which all of those were a factor
highly questionable
in your remodel. So you just said you had less than 2 inches of insulation in some areas, but you had more than 96 inches of insulation in some other areas. It was so funny. We opened up this room. I'm slamming my thing.
You are loud.
We opened up this room above the family room and found piles of unused insulation stacked up in that room. Like he had plans for it, but he didn't use it.
Yes, I remember that. This house that I live in now has become leaps and bounds. So let's talk about some of the things that we did. And honestly, like number one thing you can do for your home is upgrade your insulation. You know, insulating your attic, insulating your walls in some cases if it doesn't have wall insulation, upgrading your floor insulation. That'll help you reduce the amount of heat loss and heat gain in the summer. Definitely comfortability. That's number one.
No question.
What's the next thing on the list, Tony?
Sealing air leaks around doors and windows and outlets and light fixtures in the ceiling around the baseboards and the walls Though if your home is older, it is likely susceptible to cold air coming in from the outside, or warm or cold air from the inside getting outside, depending on what season it is.
Right.
And sealing around those, we'll call them orifices, right? Which are places where electrical comes out, and some
Orifices or fenestrations?
Okay, well, you can call it a
You love
fenestration.
fenestration. You use that word all the time.
I do when I'm referring to windows and doors usually.
Fenestrations.
But outlets and light fixtures and all those things, any of those holes in the wall or in the ceiling, you can use expanding foam around those
Yeah.
areas to keep that cold or warm air from passing through from your conditioned space to an unconditioned space.
Yeah, so I said upgrade your insulation, but probably the number one thing is air sealing. If you're going to put new insulation in your attic, you should probably take the time to air seal all of the, the holes that go from your attic down into your main home. And like you said, take a can of spray foam, walk around, dig out the insulation that's already there, foam it up, and then when you add insulation on top of that, you're going to increase that R value, because insulation is very good at one thing: insulating. It is not good
At filtering.
at air sealing.
Oh, at air sealing.
Yeah.
It's a filter too. It's good at two things.
100%. We've talked about this before. If you've
Yeah.
ever torn trim off an old window and they stuffed that yellow insulation in the sides, and then you go to pull it out and it's black, that's because it has, over the years, air is just leaking through there, and it's just capturing all of that dirt, oddly enough. So that's one thing it is not good at. The next thing on the list is to use energy efficient lighting. If you haven't already, go replace all your incandescent lights with LED. They're much more energy efficient, and they last a heck of a lot longer.
That also means replacing your halogen, which seems like a energy efficient light compared to incandescent.
Until you go to touch it when it's on.
But you really don't want those either.
Yeah, halogen bulbs are. Woo.
Yeah. You want to be replacing those with LED bulbs as well.
Yeah, they make everything.
Nowadays, they make lights that they make an LED light in every scenario. The little candle lights or the big lights, floodlights.
Edison bulbs.
Oh, you name it. They got LED everything. So you're not compromising. They cost a little bit more money, but they last a lot longer.
Absolutely.
And they're better.
Absolutely. All right, next thing on the list is to upgrade your HVAC system. If it's more than 10 years old, it's probably inefficient now, and not necessarily have to replace it if it's 10 years old, but you'll know. If you go out and it's just not putting out the heat, or it's not putting out the cold that it used to, you know that it's inefficient and it's time to replace it. You want to look for a unit that has a high SEER, or a SEER rating, which is Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio, and that'll save you tons of energy and money. But to go along with that, when you're getting a new furnace, you want to put in a programmable thermostat. If you don't, if you got one of those old ones that you flick the little knob, back and forth, and that's called a dumb thermostat, because it gets below that temperature, turns on.
Like in my travel trailer.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can replace your thermostat with a programmable thermostat
At any time.
whether you're getting a new furnace or not. You wouldn't want to get a new furnace and not get a smart thermostat. But even if your thermos is going to be with you for a bit longer, a programmable thermostat can save you a lot of money.
I will say there is a difference between a programmable thermostat and a smart thermostat. I actually have a smart thermostat, and I'm going to be honest. This might be controversial. I'm not impressed with it.
What?
Yeah.
Is it like a specific name brand, like a Nest?
Yeah, something like that.
Something
I don't
like
want to
that?
say the brand so much, but one thing that I will say, when I had my programmable thermostat, I could tell it, hey, between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m., I want it at 63 degrees in my house. So the heat would not turn on at all at night. And then during the day, I know that between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., we're home, we're getting the kids ready off to school, and then we leave for work. So then from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., I would say, turn it back down low. And then I would have it programmed. I knew my schedule for every day, and I could set it. Well, the new smart thermostats, they use sensors that can tell if you're home or not.
Oh.
And it, I
It
honestly,
it took over and was making its own decisions.
it kind of does.
It decided that you didn't know best; it knew best.
Yeah,
and so
essentially.
it started to control.
And there's some weird stuff going out there, and I
It's
don't
very
know.
iRobotish. I'm just saying.
I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was a situation that went down in, I believe, Colorado, maybe 2 summers ago. It was really hot, and all of these people had these smart thermostats hooked up to their system. And the energy company sent out like a command that turned off everyone's AC.
What?
Or it basically locked them out so they couldn't turn their AC on. They couldn't turn the temperature down in their homes to pump the AC
Wow.
because they were having kind of an energy crisis, which I don't know how you want to look at that. It's smart, right? It's probably a good thing, but do you really want someone else determining what your temperature of your home should be?
Look, here's what I'm going to say about that. If they have the ability to turn the gas off to everyone's homes, and one home is on fire, and they go in and turn the gas off remotely to keep the house from burning down, that's a good idea.
Sure.
Beyond that, I'm disagreeing with it entirely.
Yeah. Anyway, it's probably going to be controversial, in my opinion. There's people that
This is not a political show.
They were very upset that they were sweating in their own homes and they have AC right outside. They couldn't turn it on.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
take that for what it's worth. I may, in the near future, replace my smart thermostat with the old programmable thermostat.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So anyway.
The next one on here, Corey, that is on the list is install low flow fixtures. Now we're talking about water now, and this is an area where I can actually benefit from this information. I have toilets in my 3 bathrooms in my house.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes, that was good. The problem with that is they're not low flow toilets. I mean, those things are moving like probably 4 or 5 gallons
a flush
per flush.
Remember the old toilets that were like 8 gallons a flush?
Yeah,
I swear.
Yeah, these are, but mine are using a lot, and it's a big toilet. You know, I feel like it's big compared to some of the ones that I see, but it's definitely using a lot. You know, here's the thing: when you flush the toilet and you can count to like 15 before it's all the water is out of the bowl, there's a lot of water in there.
Oh yeah, I think my toilets, when we remodeled our bathrooms, we put in a high efficiency toilet. For one, it uses a lot less water. But for 2, it uses like a power flush.
Yeah.
So
that's what I need.
It incorporates air somehow, and it gets rid of the water in the bowl like quick.
Yeah.
And then it refills in seconds.
Yeah, that's what I need. I need a power flush.
Yeah, and this is also controversial. The low flow shower heads, low flow faucets. I'm down with the low flow faucets, honestly, when you're washing your hands. But a shower head, ooh, man. I don't know.
Well, look, if you have one shower head that is not low flow and you decide you want to go low flow, you just need to get 4. Put one in every corner of the shower. And so that's 4 times the low flow. That gets you back to where you were before.
Right. Okay.
Before you low flowed.
I see where you're going.
I had to go out to the water main at my house a few years ago. And we had to dial back the pressure that was coming to my house.
So I'm gonna give you a tip here.
Yeah.
Because what you did was, by turning that down, is you did not reduce the pressure coming into your home. You reduced the water volume coming into your home. If you want to reduce the pressure, you need to install what's called a PRV valve. That's a pressure reducing valve. So just a PRV, not a pressure reducing valve. But I had the same problem in my first house that I bought. The pressure coming into the house was like 130 PSI. And the problem is, when you have really high water pressure, it's hard on your dishwasher, it's hard on your washing machine, it's hard on your refrigerator, your toilet valves, everything that turns on and off. And sometimes you'll hear it in your washing machine. The water will turn on and you hear it turn off, and you hear a hard stop right?
Clunk.
Yeah, clunk. You probably have too high of water pressure, and there's ways you can test it. You can buy water pressure testing thing that you turn onto your hose bib, and then you turn it on, and it tells you what your water pressure is.
Interesting.
And you want it to be typically, I think it's 85 psi. Don't quote me on that, but it's some range in that you would want to be within. And if it's higher than that, you need a PRV installed. I had a plumber come out and do it for me, and I told him, I said, "Can't we just turn the water down at the thing?" And he says, "No, you're just reducing the volume. But when the pressure builds up at your appliances and whatnot, it's still going to be the same high pressure."
Interesting.
So for you, I'd recommend getting a PRV. They're cheap.
Very interesting.
They're maybe $200.
And
but
you install
hire
it,
the plumber.
You install it at the
well, no.
city line.
You do. You install it inside your home. So you have a really big crawl space at your house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you probably know where the water comes in, and that's where they tee it. They put it right there.
I see. Okay.
So
interesting. Yeah, that's I did not know that difference between the volume and pressure. That's interesting.
Yeah. Lucky for you, I know a good plumber.
Yes, I know the guy.
KP.
Good fella.
You know KP. Anyway, next one on the list is to plant trees and shrubs around your home. If we all know, trees offer really nice shade. They also offer a nice wind block. So if you've got nice shrubbery and trees around your house, you're going to get a nice shaded area in the summer. And then in the wintertime, it's going to block some of that really cold wind that will make it inside your home.
You'll probably want to make plans ahead of time and plant the tree that you want to offer shade 10 years before you need it. Because it takes a while for them to grow up. Or you find yourself buying a full-size tree.
Well, honestly, I bought some trees, some evergreen type trees. I can't recall the name of them, but I planted them in my backyard. I mean, you see them.
Oh, those things went up fast.
They went up.
They did.
Yeah, probably.
And they're enormous now.
4 years, they were 25 feet tall.
I did the same thing, kind of. I planted bamboo in the back.
That's right.
And the bamboo also grew up very fast and created a screen. But we were careful. We planted them inside of containers, so that they wouldn't get too crazy.
All right, next one on the list is to upgrade your appliances. If you have appliances that aren't Energy Star certified, you want to go out and look for those. This is kind of controversial. Do you want to just go out and buy all new appliances just for the sake of buying new appliances and throw the old ones out? I would say that if it's time to replace your appliances, then by all means, go out and replace it, but look for an energy efficient option.
Well, think about this too. If you are going to be replacing your appliances with something more energy efficient, there are people out there that could use appliances that work. You could donate your appliances to Habitat for Humanity Restore, and they would make those appliances available to someone who doesn't have that available to them for a very, very reasonable price. And then they use the money that they get from those sales to build homes for people who can't afford homes otherwise. So it is a great, it's a program. I don't want to call it a charity. I mean, it really kind of is, but it's a great program.
Yeah, Habitat for Humanity is not a charity.
It really knows how to utilize donated money.
Yeah, they give a hand up, not a handout.
That's right, a hand up.
They will tell you that. All right, last one on the list, and this one is kind of ridiculous, but instead of using a clothes dryer, use a clothesline.
Hey, I know a lot of people that still use
Take
clothesline.
It back to the 50s.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that still use a clothesline. There are a lot of people, Corey, believe it or not, that don't like to have their clothes dried in a dryer.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, a dryer, believe it or not, takes a toll on your clothes.
Oh, yeah.
And your clothes don't last as long if they're being dried in a dryer. It's just the natural facts of it. So a lot of people still do that. I don't think that's far-fetched. It could be a stretch for someone who's not into that sort of thing, but it is a good option if you're looking to save some green.
Good point. Save some green to make some green.
That's right. Save some green to make some green.
All right, so now let's talk about some things that you should consider if you're building new. If you're going out and you're buying a new home, or you're hiring a contractor or a home builder to build yourself a new home, or if you're a contractor listening to the show and you want to be a better builder. These are some things that you really need to consider when you're trying to become as energy efficient as possible. Not just code minimum. The codes keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And a good friend of mine always says, building to code is the worst house that you can build without getting in trouble.
That's absolutely true. I love that saying too.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And I mean, not that builders are building terrible homes, but a lot of builders aren't looking to make the home the most efficient. They're building it to make the most profit, which they need to, right? But there are a lot of things that you can incorporate into homes that will give you more profit in the end. So anyway, the first one on the list that we wrote down is the building envelope. It all starts with insulating and air sealing, right? And air sealing starts at your building envelope. Tony and I, we recommend using Tyvek products. They make a very good weather-resistant barrier. That's what you wrap the external of your home with. And what the biggest thing that does is prevent air infiltration into the home. So you wrap it. It's like you've seen it. It's got that crinkle wrap. It offers a drainability of any moisture that gets stuck in there. But that's where it starts, is with the building envelope.
Yeah, and it's not just one product. There's a lot of products that Tyvek makes that work together in unison to do one job, and it's important, in my opinion, to make sure that you're using the right accessory products.
Right.
When you're using the vapor barrier, then you want to use the Tyvek tape. You want to use the Tyvek flashing. You want to use the flexible Tyvek flashing. It's just important, and also if you're having to use some sealant, that comes from a tube, that product also made by Tyvek. So
yeah, the thing about Tyvek that makes it work so well is you think about the exterior of your home. You built this really amazing house, and then you filled it with holes, right? Because you want windows, you want doors. Well, every time you add a hole to the side of your home, you're adding in a potential for air leaks and water leaks.
Right.
So if you don't use the right products and you don't install it properly, and you don't air seal around with using foam and caulking and the tapes and all that stuff, you're asking for trouble.
Right.
So Tyvek is an amazing system. It has an amazing warranty, and they have everything to back it up with, between installation methods and training. They will come out and train your builders how to install it properly. So that's the way to go, in my opinion.
So you build the walls, and then you cut a bunch of holes in them, and then you wrap the thing with this vapor barrier, and then in the holes you put windows.
You stick windows in there.
And if you don't use a good quality window, then you're setting yourself up for higher energy bills going forward.
Right. What you want is a high performance window with a low U value. U value is like it's the opposite of R value. We kind of know what R value means. When people say R value, high R value,
right,
you think that's insulation. It's resistive qualities.
Yeah, the higher the number, the better it is. That's
right.
R21, R40, R72.
The more you got, the more you're insulated.
Right.
But with windows, you're kind of limited, right? You have 2 panes of glass or 3 panes of glass, and that's it. That's all you get. So,
and you can strategically put coatings on those panes that work together to reflect the ultraviolet rays,
right,
but allow the light in.
Right. So low E coatings are one. They also do insulated frames. They even make them with gas-filled chambers between the glass panes that offer a higher U value. Or I'm sorry, lower U value.
Just give me one example of a reason why you want to keep the ultraviolet rays out. Why?
Solar heat gain. As a window, the ultraviolet light's passing through that window, and it's causing the interior of your home to heat up.
That's right.
So in the wintertime, sometimes that's great. But in the summertime, that's bad, right? You want to reduce the amount of solar heat gain coming into your home.
Yeah. Ultraviolet ultraviolet rays also have a tendency to take a toll on your internal furnishings. It can change the color of your couch in the one
Yeah.
spot where it gets, a lot of ultraviolet light coming through there.
I have a funny story about.
But if you sit in front of the window with your mouth open, it will whiten your teeth. It takes years and years, but
Years and years.
But you can do it. It works.
One time I was walking on the beach. We were in Cannon Beach, and we're walking down the beach. It was sunny out, and you see all these beautiful homes up on the bluff, on the ridge. And at one point, you're walking along, and all of a sudden, you just get blasted with like this death ray of heat.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "What in the world?"
Yeah.
And honestly, it was the low E coatings on the windows that were reflecting the heat down onto the beach. It was
And it was
unreal.
Concentrated.
It was literally like a death ray.
Yeah.
So that's how well it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty
Anyway.
crazy. That's funny.
All right, next one on the list is to, think about the outside. Landscaping. You want to install or you want to plant plants that are native to your area. That way you can reduce the amount of water that you're throwing down on it just to keep them alive. It always cracks me up when I see palm trees.
Yeah.
People are going to be mad because
That's
people
the
love
opposite.
palm
It's
trees.
the
But
opposite of that. I
in
like
Oregon-
palm trees too.
in Oregon, palm trees in Oregon, it's just weird.
I like palm trees too. I think it brings a whole new look. But the thing is, it's not the inexpensive way to go. What we're talking about is reducing your energy bills,
Right.
right? And being more efficient and building sort of in a responsible way, using less water, using less power, all of those things.
What do you think is going to use
You-
less water? A fern that's native to Oregon, or a palm tree? It's just,
I mean,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems weird to me because it feels like palm trees probably don't get a lot of water.
Maybe, I don't know.
Anyways,
I don't know.
it's kind of a desert tree, right? Or like a tropical tree. I guess there's a lot of rainfall in tropical areas. Look,
all right.
I don't get the science of it. I'm just saying we're not telling you not to have a palm tree if you want a palm tree. We're just
No.
saying it's not the efficient way to
Right. If you're trying to save as much water as possible, you want to use native plants.
go. Right, native plants. That's
Simple as
good,
that.
It's a good point.
All right, next one on the list is to try and use recycled or salvaged materials when possible.
Now, I'll tell you who got this right. The guy that remodeled your house.
Oh.
That was the guy that recycled.
Well, no, he didn't get it right. He used recycled and salvaged materials, but not when possible.
No.
He just used them.
I know. I'll tell you what, one of the things that I will never, ever forget about
Is that stitched together beam and post? Holy moly.
some of the things that we saw when we started pulling sheetrock off of the walls in your house astounded me.
The beam that held up the entire second floor of my home was pieced together wood
Yeah,
of different widths in just crazy. It was all bolted together
we pulled up the
like
floor
Frankenstein.
in the kitchen, and there was at least 4 different kinds of subfloor that was
It was
down.
awful.
It was very.
I am indebted to you for the rest of my life for helping me with
It
that
was
disaster.
very awful. It's not like that anymore. It's great now. But we saw some stuff. We learned some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It fueled hundreds of episodes of this show.
Got us a lot of content.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is to design your home kind of using passive solar design principles. If you've never heard of passive house, that's kind of an extreme way to take this. It's a whole design method to, use solar heat gain to your benefit by putting thermal mass inside your home using concrete
Yeah.
or things like that. In the way that you position your home on your lot, the trees, it takes everything into consideration to make your home as energy efficient as possible. I think a passive house is amazing.
Very intriguing.
Tony and I don't know much about it, so we're not going to talk about it
Yeah.
that much.
But if you want an interesting read, Google it.
Yeah, passive house.
There is a lot to take in. There's a lot of information.
But there are things to consider in that realm when you're building a new home.
Sure.
For instance, southern facing windows.
Right.
If you're building a house and you've got all your windows facing south, it's going to be hotter than Hades in the summertime. So you just need to consider that. And sometimes you can design roof overhangs that come out that block the sun during the high summer months and when the sun's lower in the wintertime. You want to accept that heat into your home. So there's just little things like that. And it'd be worth asking your architect about it.
Yeah.
So that you can reduce the amount of energy that you're putting in to keep it warm and cold.
Yeah, and some of the other things that you could do with that in mind, especially with today's technology, maybe you have blinds or drapes that can be set to a timer, and you're maximizing the sun in the morning and then closing those drapes in the afternoon.
Smart technology.
Yeah, smart technology can go a long way.
I actually have another story real quick about the low E coatings on windows. In the back of my house, in my living room, we have a full bank of windows that faces south. And during the summer months, that sun hits those windows. And right underneath those windows, my wife has planted like a bulb garden.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of little like iris and, beautiful flowers that come up. And in the hottest parts of this, or when the sun is at its peak during the middle of the summer, all of that stuff gets baked, absolutely baked, and all of the grass that about probably 10 feet out from those windows
just turns brown,
completely brown because it's the heat bouncing off of those windows.
Yeah.
So I've actually considered, I want to buy one of those covers, those window covers that come down electronically.
Yeah.
They have them with little solar motors.
Like a shade.
Yeah, it's like a shade, sunshade that covers that whole bank of windows.
That's a good idea.
I think I'm going to do that probably this year.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. That could really save you on your air conditioning costs.
Oh, 100%. Those are by far the biggest windows in my house, too.
And protect your bulbs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you want those bulbs to grow up to be
LEDs.
Yeah, LEDs. I was going to say salad bowls.
That was stupid.
Yeah.
All right, next one on the list is, consider incorporating sustainable building materials.
Hey, sustainable building materials.
There's a lot, too. There are products out there that range from, bamboo flooring. There's tons of bamboo flooring.
Bamboo decking.
Yep, bamboo decking.
There's bamboo, lots of stuff.
Yep, consider using steel on your home. A lot of roofing materials you can buy, steel, metal roofing that has been recycled. So that's something to keep in mind. Here's a weird one, straw bales.
Yeah?
I've never seen one personally, a home built with straw bales, but I know a guy.
I know a pig that had a house built out of straw.
And it blew down. It's actually a thing. I mean, people will build homes out of straw, and then obviously they clad it correctly and then frame it out on the inside.
Wow, interesting.
So your walls are literally 2 feet thick. But I know somebody that really researched this and they wanted to do it.
Wow.
I'll tell you about it after the show.
Wow, interesting.
Cork, that's another material that I'm seeing more and more of used on flooring and wall tiles. It's a renewable resource. Recycled glass. Have you seen recycled glass countertops?
I have not, no.
They look amazing.
Really?
I mean, honestly, they look very similar to quartz. Something that you would get quartz countertop-wise, you probably would not be able to tell the difference between
Seems
glass
like it
and
would
quartz.
be a little fragile for a countertop.
No, they add tons of resin and epoxy, and they're not. They're amazing.
I'll tell you what, I've seen concrete countertops, though. Poured concrete countertops.
Yes, but
And
did you know that
that's a pretty cool
concrete
thing.
is like one of the worst things for the environment?
What makes you say?
Not pouring it, of course, but the manufacturing process of concrete is terrible for the environment.
Interesting. No,
Yeah.
I would not have known that.
Yeah. They say that it causes the most greenhouse gas, concrete.
Greenhouse gas.
That's what they say.
They would say they would be competing with the greenhouse gas that's made at your house.
Only when you're over. Next one on the list is, salvaged wood.
Yep, that's a
If
good
you
one.
have the means to get salvaged wood and use it incorporated into your home, I would say to not use salvaged wood for structural
Sure.
purposes.
Yeah.
I've
That's a
actually
good idea.
had over the years, people come to me and ask me if they can use, say a tree fell in their yard. They say, hey, I'm going to have a guy come out and mill this down for me into a 6x12 or whatever.
Right.
And they want to use it in their home.
Yeah,
Well,
because the tree was growing on their property.
Right.
That makes sense.
Here's the problem with that. You can't use it in a structure unless it is graded. It has to have a lumber grade on it. So if you have a inspector that comes in and looks at it and says, where'd you get this 6x12? Or would you get all, if somebody cut down their own forest and wanted to build their house,
Sure.
they don't have any lumber stamps, which is required by code, right? So it's strong enough. You're probably pretty sure, but you haven't had a professional grader grade it.
Yeah. Well, call the grader. Have him come down.
Maybe
he'll operate the saw.
I have actually done that. We've actually gotten somebody in touch with somebody that was able to send somebody over, and it cost a fortune, but they were able to grade certain pieces of lumber and have it done.
Interesting.
So just keep that in mind.
That is interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Salvage wood is the same way. If you're using 100-year-old wood, there might be, you'd have to ask your jurisdiction, but there might be some paths and methods to get
loopholes.
Some loopholes to be able to use it. What's the next one, Tony?
Cellulose insulation. Cellulose insulation is like I think of it like little cotton balls of insulation that you blow into the walls and into the
but it's made from recycled newspapers.
Yeah. Yes, made from recycled newspapers.
Yeah. There's all kinds of...
We don't even use newspapers
I know.
anymore. When was the last time you saw a newspaper?
I don't even know. But there's all kinds of energy efficient and renewable resource type insulation. You can even get like wool. I've seen recycled denim, all kinds of weird stuff. So
I saw some people using sheep's wool to insulate the walls in their home, actually.
Yeah.
Then they sheared the sheep that they had on the property.
Crazy.
That is wild. And it's a great conversation for the coffee table.
I wonder if their house was cozy, warm and cozy, like a wool blanket.
Like a wool blanket.
All right, next one is in, sustainable building materials. Like we all know, Trex decking. Trex decking is made with like 98% or 99% recycled plastic bags.
That's right.
So every time you go to the grocery store, take your old plastic bags with you, or film, all plastic film. And most grocery stores, when you go, they'll have a little container that you can shove them in.
That's right.
Those go back to the Trex factory.
Yeah.
They melt them up and then put them with wood fiber, which is also recycled from cabinets and different places that manufacture wood products, and they pump it out. So that's a very, very green product.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And then engineered wood products like I-joist and paralams and other kinds of oriented strand board, which is made out of portions of wood,
right.
Chips and chunks of wood.
Yeah, you look back 100 years ago, and you could get solid pieces of wood to frame houses with that were really strong.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, that same wood, the way that I won't say engineered trees, because they didn't engineer them. They just took the trees, they replant the trees that grow the fastest. So by doing that over the years, the growth rings on trees have become gigantic because they've selectively picked the trees with the fastest growing genetics.
Right.
So when you look at that, lumber's not as strong as it used to be. That's a fact. And then the other thing is it's not as big as it used to be.
Right.
So we have these ever growing houses that have, the open concept, right? You have these big, wide open rooms. Well, you need things that will span that far. So engineered wood is perfect. It uses trees that are normally way too small to use for anything else. They chip it up or they shred it up and then they glue it back together. And it is a very green thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in the same way that they have the ability to use the fall down from other pieces of wood that are being made
Correct.
as well.
Yeah.
And so utilizing all of the product and not leaving some of it to end up sort of
Rotting.
no. I was gonna say
Swirling in a toilet. What are you doing there?
I was gonna say, just lay it around a bush, and used as
mulch.
Mulch.
Bark mulch. There
I
you
was
go.
getting there with this little thing I was doing.
Bark mulch. I get it now. Yeah. Sprinkle.
So what's next on the list?
All right. Next one on the list would be to talk about your HVAC system.
Wow, we are not HVAC experts.
No, but
we do live in homes that are heated by one. So
correct.
That makes us partial experts.
Well, when you're building a new home, you'll see this a lot with track homes, let's just say, or homes that I won't say track homes actually, because track homes are typically engineered and designed to be the most efficient, which means that they're going to put in the smallest furnace that they could possibly put in, which is what you want. If you oversize a system, you're wasting energy. So you want to size the system correctly. It should be sized appropriately for the space that you're heating and cooling. If you oversize it, it's going to be less efficient, and it's going to result in a short cycle on your unit. So it makes a lot of sense to actually have someone there's calculations they can do, which they'll have to come out and do a blower door test and a duct blaster test to make sure that your home is
sealed up tightly,
sealed tight
or not,
and ventilated right,
and
the ductwork doesn't leak. You'll see a lot of times your furnace is out in your garage, and then you have all that ductwork go down into your crawl space, like a spider, go out all over your home,
and then nobody ever sees it again.
Right. But the problem is, like in my home, all that stuff over the years fell apart, rotted, and I was heating the world. So
you were definitely heating the mud that was under your house.
Awful. So you want to have a system that is energy efficient and air sealed. So having a company come out and do an actual sizing. If they just come out and measure square footage on your house, that's not enough.
Right.
They have to do a lot of different things. So take the time is definitely what you want to do. And the same thing goes for the ductwork. When you're building a new home, you want to make sure that the person or the company that's doing the HVAC is designing the ductwork to be most efficient, not necessarily the cheapest or the easiest.
Right.
It's all goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about the SEER rating, and I know that that's how the HVAC manufacturers rate the performance of their product.
The seasonal energy efficient ratio.
And they do that so that we don't have to try to do all of that genius math.
Right.
So just look for a SEER rating that is 14 or higher.
Yeah.
And that's something to just keep in mind there.
That's the direct relationship of efficiency that you want. Another one, when you're doing your HVAC, it's programmable thermostat. We already talked about that a little bit.
Yep.
Make sure you have good air filtration. If you have the opportunity when you're building a new home to install an air filter, definitely do it. Tony and I we had those awful fires near our homes a few years back, and the air in our homes, the air quality outside was horrible, but inside of our homes, it wasn't great. So we were able to, I was able to utilize an air filter that I had, but if you can get one installed directly with your system, it's going to reduce the dander and all that stuff that you're allergic to. So you want to get something with a high MERV, MERV, minimum efficiency reporting value. It's very scientific.
Yeah, it is. It kind of takes me right to a heat recovery ventilator. This is something that's not standard in homes today.
Right.
We feel, of course, that it should be. A lot of people feel like it should be, but it's not. It's an added expense. But what it does is exactly the thing that Corey and I talk about all the time. We talk about, the old timers say that a house needs to breathe, and they're absolutely right about that. But we don't want it breathing under the door, around the windows, through the crawl space. That's not where we want it breathing.
Right.
We want it to be built tight and ventilated right, and that you can ventilate it using an HRV, a heat recovery ventilator, which intentionally brings fresh air into the home on a regular basis. But when it brings it in, it acclimates it to the temperature of your home so that it's sending air in that's already the same temperature as the air that's in the
Right.
home, but it's fresh air. And then it's taking the old air out of the house and,
Replacing it with fresh.
replacing it with fresh air. So changing your air intentionally in that way. If you don't know a lot about that and it intrigues you, or you're going to be making a change with your HVAC system, look into an HRV or an ERV. An ERV is the same thing, but it also removes moisture from the air. If you're in an area that you have high moisture, you want to get that out of the air.
Yeah, it just depends. And the best thing to do is to talk to your HVAC contractor that knows about those things.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Or you can research it yourself. But if you'll know you want one if you walk into your teenager's bedroom and it smells like a locker room.
Yeah. We actually know of a really good HVAC contractor. The name of the company is Caliber. Are you familiar with?
Oh yeah, Caliber Mechanical.
Caliber, Caliber Mechanical in the Pacific Northwest area, the Portland metro area.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that company, those guys do a great job, and hardworking bunch of guys.
Yeah, if you call them, tell them you heard about them on the Weekend Warriors. They're good friends of ours.
Yeah,
They will be shocked because they don't pay us.
Yeah,
Maybe they will.
maybe. So this is another one that intrigues me. You actually had a mini split installed in your home. This is talk to me about the mini split that you had installed in the spare bedroom or the bonus room upstairs.
Yeah, so first of all, what I wrote down on the list is to consider installing mini splits around your home instead of using a big central air system. A mini split is essentially a very small heat pump, and you could put one in every room if you wanted to. They have multi-head units that run back to a heat pump, and then you can heat or cool that specific room as you like, not just part of the main system that runs and heats or cools your whole house, right? So if you don't use bedrooms, Tony and I got in trouble. You remember this? Years back, we were talking about energy efficiency, and we said if you're not using a room, to close it off, seal it up, seal up the register, the heat register. That is actually terrible. You don't want to do that. It sounds like it's a good idea, right? It sounds like if you're not using that room, you close it off, well, all that heat's going to go somewhere else. But that's not the case. What you're doing
technically is still true.
Well, right.
If you close it, the heat will not go into that room. That's true. But
correct.
But the problem is that it's not solving the problem you're trying to solve, which is using less energy.
Right.
The only reason you would do that is to use less energy.
You're creating a situation where you're making the furnace work harder, which will reduce its lifespan by a lot. So when we were talking about that, Tony actually has in his home, you don't have a central air system. You have cadet heaters.
Correct.
So for you, that actually does make sense.
Space heating, yeah.
You can do that. And you could do that with a mini split system. So if you just installed mini splits all over your house, it's basically on-demand heat and cold in that particular room. So it's something to consider. You see it a lot over in Europe. You see these big units or these little units on the side of on the wall up high. That's a mini split.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about windows, Tony. This is your
Yes.
favorite topic.
I do like windows.
We brought it up earlier. Installing high efficiency windows into your home, it's a must. We talked about having a low U factor, U value. You want it less than 0.3. That's kind of like where you want to be these days.
Right, that's right. Actually, I mean, they're getting down to where it's going to be below 2.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing. It's changing fast. Technology.
How in the world could you get below 2.2? That's crazy.
Oh, they get it down there.
The next one, consider when you're talking about windows, there's the importance of it is the solar heat gain coefficient, which is the SHGC. What that does is that measures how much solar radiation passes through the window. And again, you know that because if you have south-facing windows and your blinds are up, and it's summertime and all of a sudden it's 100 degrees in your room,
Right.
that's why. It's because your windows have a very low solar heat gain coefficient or high, and it's letting too much of that in.
Right.
We talked about low E coatings. Low E means, what does the E mean, Tony?
Emissivity. Emissivity, which seems like a big word, but the root word of emissivity is just emit. So low emission, low emitting.
Yeah, what that does, it's a coating that reduces the heat and the radiation, the UV radiation from coming through,
Right.
while still allowing light.
Right.
Which
That's
is what you
absolutely
want.
right.
You want to look at the frame of the windows. There are, like if you have old windows in your home that are old aluminum windows, you know that those are terrible insulators.
Right.
You know, you'll see in the wintertime they'll start growing frost.
Yeah.
That's
Plus
because
they're not thermally broken,
Right.
so they'll sweat on the inside.
Correct. Newer windows, like Tony said, they're thermally broke, which means they'll have some sort of material between the outside aluminum and the inside aluminum that prevents that heat from or cold from transferring through the window
That's
frame.
right. That's right.
So that's an important thing.
Yeah, it's
Fiberglass and wood, vinyl, those are all very good at low thermal
yeah,
heat.
absolutely. It's fiberglass really is amazing. Wood, of course, has its inherent problems because it's wood
Mhm.
and because it's it's supple kind of in
Supple?
comparison to fiberglass or metal, right? Fiberglass is a substrate; nothing can soak into it at all. I don't know. Supple's not the right word.
Soft.
But it's not. If it's hardwood, it's not soft
True.
necessarily, but it is
Susceptible. Maybe
it's
that's the word.
it can absorb. It has the ability to absorb, unlike metal or fiberglass,
Right.
or even vinyl. Vinyl also does not absorb. But aluminum windows that have a thermal break today actually are very popular and not really very inexpensive. They can be pretty expensive to get those, but people are buying them because they look like what was there.
Mhm.
And aesthetics is a very important thing. A lot of times to people, they want to keep that same aesthetic that the house had. So
Right.
it is available, but fiberglass windows are expensive, but really good and strong frames.
They're probably the best. Would you say that they're the best?
I mean, wood windows really still have the number one prestige mark.
Mm.
Wood windows, maybe that are aluminum clad on the outside.
Oh, yeah.
It's more durable to the weather on the outside. You can get them in multiple colors, but still has that beautiful clear wood finish on the inside.
So, yeah, like you said, prestigious, not necessarily efficient.
Right, that's true.
All right. Next one on our list is to consider advanced framing techniques. Now, when you're talking about advanced framing techniques, as a homeowner, this is something that you would be choosing or doing. This is something that a builder would have to incorporate into the construction of the home that would reduce the heat and cold transfer through the walls, and also maybe even add insulation into the walls. So you think about old school houses were built 2x4 walls. You can only put so much insulation, so much insulation into a 2x4 wall. So
and have it perform the way that it's intended to.
Correct. So to meet our value standards, to get that higher, we switch to 2x6 wall. So that allows us to get a higher R value in the exterior of our homes. That's like the blanket, or the coat that you put on your house, all that insulation.
It's important to note that if you get insulation that is an R21 versus insulation that's an R11, those insulations are made thicker. The thicker the insulation, the more it insulates.
Right.
But if you take an R21
and cram it
and
into
you
an
stuff
R11
it
spot
into an R11 spot, it's going to perform like R11. Squeezing it and mashing it into a spot is only going to make it perform as good as it can in that small space.
It doesn't help you.
It requires the space, the fully open space, in order to do what you want it to do.
Right. So one thing to consider is when you're talking about framing is like we've said this word a few times, thermal break. Now, our wood, just lumber, has an R value of about 1 R per inch.
Right.
So a 2x6 that's in your wall has a value of about R6. And then the big gap between it,
R21.
filled with insulations, R21. And then the next stud, R6. So when you take a thermal camera and you shine it on a house in the middle of wintertime, you can see every single stud.
Because they're colder.
You're correct.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is that's called the
Or,
thermal transfer.
I guess technically they're warmer in this instance if it's warm in the house.
Oh, yeah.
And they're
They would be.
transferring the heat. If you're standing outside on a cold winter morning and you're looking at the outside of a house, you will notice that the frost on the outside of the house is just melted where the studs are.
Yeah.
Because the heat from the inside of the house is being transferred out. You're losing it through the studs because they're only R6 instead of R21.
So consider that. Now think about all of the framing that goes into the exterior of your home to make it both structural, strong. You want it strong, but you also want a high R value. So to do that, you would either have to remove framing, which you can do when you work directly with an architect or an engineer. You can, eliminate what they call unnecessary framing at, jack studs or crippler studs, or sometimes you'll see triple or quadruple studs in a wall. And all that's doing is, you're taking 6 inches of width in a wall and you're making it R6 instead of R21.
Right.
So there's ways to design homes that use this, that eliminate this thermal bridging is what they call it. And another one of those situations would be for headers. A header goes over your window or your door, and it's a big chunk of wood.
And it carries the weight that would otherwise be pushing down into that opening.
Correct.
All the weight that's up above it. So it has to be beefy.
That's correct. So you have a what's called a header. Now, you can get what they call insulated headers, which basically you take a piece of wood that's strong enough to hold a window or the whatever's coming on down over that window or that door, that opening, and you're sandwiching it with foam, rigid foam insulation. Now, what you're doing by insulating those headers inside and out is creating that thermal break.
Thermal break.
So it won't pass through, the heat and the cold won't pass through that piece of wood as easily as it would if it was just solid wood.
Right.
So hopefully that makes sense. It's something to consider when you're building a new home. Another one is at a corner, where you come into a corner of a house. Usually, olden days, you would see just tons of wood there, right? 2, 3, 4 studs, or you would see a 6x6 post or something like that, just to have framing in the corner that's solid.
Right.
The problem with that, now it's solid wood, or if you've created a corner that's dead. So now that you can get, now they recommend building it in a way that you can get insulation inside of that corner. So that's more for the builder. But if you're a homeowner looking to get an energy efficient home built, might be something to talk to them about.
Yep.
Advanced framing techniques.
Yep.
Another one is to use sheathing on the exterior of your house. Use foam. You can, if you have your home properly engineered, you can use foam instead of OSB or plywood in certain areas.
Well, OSB or plywood oftentimes provides shear wall.
Correct.
Shear ratings in the places where it's used. So if you've gained your shear in the wall from another way, then you could have foam insulation on the exterior of the wall.
Correct. Creating a
thermal
break.
break between the siding and the studs, keeping that heat from transferring from inside the house to outside the house.
Another way to do it too is to sheathe the entire exterior of your home on top of the plywood with foam.
Mm-hmm.
That's another building technique that you're creating that thermal break, creating a nice warm blanket on the outside so that cold air is never really touching the wood that has a very low R value.
Right.
So,
interesting. Very interesting,
the last one in advanced framing techniques is what's called a raised heel. Now, it sounds silly.
Is that like a high heel?
Kind of. But if you consider a roof truss, shaped like a triangle, right? And at the exterior of your wall, the top plate where it meets the wall, trusses come down, and the very skinniest part of that triangle is 2x4. Trusses are usually made with a 2x4
Right,
top
right.
cord, 2x4 bottom cord.
Yep.
Even if you had a 2x6 bottom cord, what you're doing is, as that insulation in your attic, which you want approximately 20 inches. I think that's what it's up to now. R38 is what you want. Might even be higher now.
R40 something now.
So you want that really thick insulation. And like Tony said earlier, the thinner insulation gets, the less work it's doing.
The squished down it gets.
So if you think about that, when you're shoving it down into the
corner
of a triangle, what's happening?
Yeah.
You're losing R value.
You're losing performance.
At the entire perimeter of your home.
Right.
So what they've done is they've created what's called a raised heel truss, where you're adding framing down there to basically raise that triangle so it's squared off.
To separate the top member
from the bottom.
From the bottom member with that vertical.
Correct.
Creating space for you to fit your insulation in there so
Absolutely.
you can be properly insulated.
So you have, whatever it is, R38 or R40, whatever it is now, all the way to the edge of your home.
Yeah, very smart.
So
very smart.
You need that. I don't know why it took so long to make that a big deal, but everybody's doing it now, so it's good.
Yeah.
Last one on the list, Tony. Oh, it's not the last one on the list. We have 2 more items. We're going to rip through these real quick.
Okay.
This show's getting long. VOCs. VOCs stand for volatile organic compounds. And if you can, try to buy products that are limited in those VOCs.
You find VOCs in paint, in adhesives, in sealant, like caulking, yeah. And here's what happens: it's inside there, and it does whatever job that it does inside there, and then you utilize it. Like, let's say you're
in the can, you mean?
Yeah, inside the tube. Or how about this? We'll call it inside of a tube of caulk, and you run that bead of caulk, a 1/4-inch bead, on your siding, between your siding and your window or your trim. And you run that 1/4-inch bead, and it goes on there, and it covers. It's exactly what it's supposed to do. As those VOCs off gas from that bead of caulk that you put on the outside of the house, that caulking shrinks and shrinks and shrinks down. And as it shrinks down, it pulls apart and it separates, and it creates all kinds of problems. VOCs don't remain inside of the product that they're put in.
Right.
They off gas and they leave.
Yep.
And when they off gas, it's not good for anything. It's not good for anyone. And so
when it's inside your home, you
Right.
know, like Tony said, any compound has solids and gas, the gas that's in there.
Right.
Solvents. There's solvents and solids. So they put those together to make a product pliable. That's why paint, when it hardens, the reason it hardens is because the solvents evaporate away, leaving the solids.
Right, exactly.
So that's how that works. The same thing with caulking. So do you want to breathe all those solvents in as that stuff dries over years and years and years?
Don't answer that. You don't.
You don't. So using products with low VOC is good for the environment, and it's good for your health.
Yeah, agreed.
The last thing, Tony, on our list, and I know we've beat this one to death, but smart home technology.
Yeah.
Smart thermostats. I'm going to leave that alone. Talked about that earlier. But there are other things you can do. I have a whole smart home that I've talked about on this show tons of times. But you can install energy monitoring systems that tell you how much energy you're using.
Yeah.
And you can identify.
You can buy a smart surge protector. I would call it a surge protector or a power strip, which is something that multiple appliances or things would plug into.
Sure.
And you could buy one that will tell you about your energy consumption. It's information that you would not otherwise have, and why wouldn't you want it?
Right. And it allows you to say, I'm going to turn off the TV. All of these appliances that you have inside your home, they're an energy drain all the time. They're just trickling energy. You could turn everything off in your house, and your home will still be drawing energy until you unplug it. So
I know some people that are energy drains.
I do too. But anyway, smart lighting, that's another one we've talked about many times. You can, program it to turn off so that you aren't leaving lights on all day or all night. They automatically turn off, or you can use to dim your lighting, which will reduce the energy that you're using.
Yeah.
Smart appliances are the same thing. There's all kinds of different ways that they monitor energy and make your refrigerator more efficient. So probably the last one, solar panels.
Yeah, solar panels. I mean, nobody knows more about how solar panels can benefit your bottom line than Corey Valdez.
I did get solar panels installed in my home.
Yeah.
And my energy bill went from it went the very first month that I had them up, my energy bill was like, $180 or something. And then the very first month, my first bill was $7.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's very cool.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Very cool. I mean, it's not a thing that's inexpensive, but it's a thing that's obviously amazing. It doesn't matter where you see it. You're driving on a road to Burns, and remotely you come across, in the middle of nowhere, a blinking yellow light. And as you approach the blinking yellow light that's on top of a sign that says, "Beware abrupt edge," you see right on top of that little light is just a little solar panel.
I was like, where are you going with this?
And that light will just blink and blink and blink and blink as long as the sun is coming up.
There you go.
It's just amazing in the simplest fashion. It's amazing what solar panels can do for us.
Yep.
And so it's something to look at.
Cool. Well, there you go. Hopefully we gave you some something to think about for your own home, or if you're building a new home, or if you're a contractor. If you want to check us out, you make sure you hit subscribe down below and follow us on our shows. You can hit the little, notifications.
Yeah.
So every time we drop an episode, you can listen.
Yeah.
Go check out our YouTube channel, and Tony and I are putting up videos all the time, so we really appreciate you going and follow us there. Or Instagram, we're at WW Home Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.